క్లిక్ చేశారా రికార్డ్ మీద?
అయిపోయింది చేశాను, స్టార్ట్ అయింది.
సో uh, so see, two of them have recently joined, so I just wanted to give a quick intro about accounts payable as well. Again, we'll go. I believe already few of them are aware about vendor creation and vendor groups. Let me just quickly recap, and then we'll go to the next topic. I'll now let me not explain full accounts payable cycle. Just in few steps, I'll try to make you understand, and then we can go step by step. In general, accounts payable, or we'll call it as in procure to pay. So procure to pay itself, it says that the process will start from the procurement of any of the products. If let's say in this example we are we have created the legal entity that is real Reliance. Assume that Reliance is dealing with a lot of products, right? They have a lot of businesses as well. So this in this procure to pay, in the sense, see, they'll be having multiple departments, multiple stores and all. So it will start on the purchase requisition. That means once, for each and every department, they will start raising the request. These are the products they are looking for, and then the process will continue. Uh, Let me just update that as well. For example, it will start with the purchase requisition note. Yeah. So the process how to create a purchase requisition, that we'll discuss it later. Purchase requisition is nothing but each and every, from each and every department of that particular legal entity, there will be a note. It will be created with the list of the products they are looking for, and then the next step would be checking there will be procurement team. So this procurement team will try to identify the list of the vendors. So, for example, let us say there's a they're looking for clothes in the vendor in the market. So there might be a number of vendors who are dealing with who will be selling these clothes, right? So they will try to this procurement team will try to list out the best vendors. For example, they might be having their own terms and conditions, quality. There are a lot of factors that are involved before listing on the vendors. So in that way, this procurement will team will try to shortlist the vendor, and then once the shortlist once the vendor is being shortlisted, they'll be sending the purchase order. So this procurement team will try to shortlist the vendors, right? So once these vendors are identified, they'll be sending a purchase order to these vendors. Purchase order is nothing but purchase order. See, there are different types of purchase orders here, but in general, what do you mean by purchase order? This is it's a document which contains the quantity of products and the terms and conditions, due date, and then what is the amount, everything, like when they're supposed to deliver, GR, like anything that is related to shipment. So it will not impact any general ledger impact here. So once PO is created, so these vendors will receive the PO, right? For example, Reliance has sent an PO to vendor A, stating that we need 1,000 quantity of clothes or anything. And once vendor receives his purchase order, they'll be sending. Vendor will start dispatching the goods, right? So vendor might send. Uh, GRN is nothing but goods receipt note, or here we'll call it as a PRN as well. That's a product receipt note. We are not discussing in depth what is selected these goods from this particular vendor in this warehouse. This GRN will have all the list of these details. So from here, our obligation, that our legal obligation will start. That means even for example, once we receive the goods, right, our assets also it will increase. So whenever there is an increase in the asset value, we will have to generalize the transaction. Anyways, that we'll discuss it once we create the GRN. So once vendor supplies his goods in a multiple. For example, we have ordered in purchase order, let's say 1,000 quantity. Vendor might send this 1,000 quantity in a single shipment or multiple shipments in multiple different delivery dates. So once we receive the goods, at the same time, vendor will be sending the invoice copy as well. So once we receive an invoice from the vendor, we are legally obligated to process the payment. But the reason why this GRN invoice, it will be, see, there are chances as per their terms and conditions between the company and the vendor. Either this GRN and invoice, it will be sent at the same time, or else sometimes they'll first they will supply the GRN and then they'll send the invoice copy. Yeah. So once we receive the invoice copy, this invoice, there will be a validation team, will be the accounts payable team. As we discussed in the PO, there are 1,000 quantity, right? But in one
Srinivas,
GRN, hmm.
your voice is breaking in between.
Am I audible
In
now?
between. You're audible, but in between your voice is breaking. I think there's a sort of gap is coming. Like we are missing like 5 seconds or something. I don't know. Is it me or with everybody?
Uh, can someone confirm? Is it same with him or
Yes, Srinivas.
hello?
Yes, Srinivas. Your voice is some breaking. Your
There
voice
is
is
coming
not clear.
a 5 to 10
Let me
seconds
try to
gap is
rejoin
coming.
the call.
You're explaining GRN to now breaking your voice.
Yeah. Is it better now? Hello?
I mean, it
Yeah,
is
okay.
audible, but when you're talking continuously, in between 5 to 10 seconds, it is going off. So it's okay. You can continue. We'll tell you.
All right. So if there is more latency, then you can let me know. We'll see. Okay. So I was telling that once PO is created, let's say we'll be having some 1,000 quantity we have ordered in the PO, right? And the GRN we have received for 100 quantity, and even invoice also will be vendor will be sending for 100 quantity itself. So once we receive all this GRN and invoice, there will be an accounts payable team. Yeah. So before receiving the invoice, we will also check for if there are any damaged goods or returned goods.
బ్రో అది 2 సెకండ్స్‌కి ఒకసారి
So once we
స్ట్రక్
Excuse
అవుతుంది
me.
వాయిస్ రావట్లేదు.
Excuse me. Srinivas.
hello,
Srinivas, సేమ్ అదే రిపీట్ అవుతోంది మళ్ళా.
అదే చెప్తున్నాను నేను.
అది
Hello.
కాదు, మీరు కట్ అయిపోతుంది మీరు చెప్తున్నది.
వాయిస్ కట్ అయిపోతుందా?
మీరు ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్
అవును.
చేస్తున్నది అది కట్టే వస్తుంది మాకు.
ఇందాక లో అన్నావు, లేటెన్సీ ఎగిరిపోయింది నాకు. మరి లాస్ట్
ఒక్క నిమిషం ఎందుకు ఇప్పుడు వినబడుతుందా క్లియర్గా?
ఇట్స్ క్లియర్ ఓన్లీ, కానీ ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేసేటప్పుడు చాలా కట్ అవుతుంది నీ వర్డ్స్ కంటిన్యూస్ గా ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేసినప్పుడు.
అవునా?
మధ్యలో ఒక 5 సెకండ్స్ అట్లా ఫ్లో మిస్ అవుతుంది. ఇందాక వర్డ్కి పోతాను.
ఓకే,
ఇప్పుడు
చూసాం
కంటిన్యూ
మరి.
చేయి, చూద్దాం.
ఇప్పుడు
కంటిన్యూ చేయి, కంటిన్యూ
ఓకే,
చేయి. ఏదైనా బ్రేక్ అయితే మళ్ళీ చాట్ బాక్స్లో చెప్తాను.
జస్ట్ పింక్ చేయండి ఒకసారి. So we were discussing, once we receive the goods right from the vendor, we will check whether all the goods received, whether it is whether they are in a good condition, or if there are any damaged goods, or let's say if they might have shipped in wrong products also, right? It happens. So we'll be sending returning back those damaged goods, or we'll be sending those wrong shipped products. At that time we'll be issuing the credit note to the vendor. So this credit note will let the vendor know that yes, these are the products which you are returning back, or we are sending it back for X, and for any reason. So once this credit note is being issued, and then if there are no damaged goods or anything, we'll be receiving the invoice from the vendor, right? So this invoice will have all the list of the products with the price, quantity, as per the GR and everything. So once we receive the invoice, there will be a validation team. We'll call it as an accounts payable validation team, or invoice processing validation team. So this team will try to validate whether, there will be a unique number for PO, GRN, and invoice, right? They'll try to match whether, because in this GRN and invoice, there will be PO number mandatorily. They should be updated in that. So once they check, once they validate, or once we'll call it as a three-way matching or two-way matching here. So let us say, as per the PO and GRN and invoice, if it is matching, then it is confirmed that yes, as per our PO, the GRN and invoice goods we have received, and there's no pending from vendor end. And then next, once they receive the confirmation from all these GRN and the warehouse, everything, there will be payable team. This accounts payable team, they'll be getting an update from the validation team with the list of the vendors. For example, vendor, the payment proposal will be created. So payment proposal will be created by the payment team based on the documents, or based on the information that is available from the accounts payable validation team. So this payment proposal will contain the list of all the vendors, and what is the amount they are supposed to pay, their bank details, everything. So the payable team will ensure that the timely payments are being sent to all the vendors, and then there will be settlement. So settlement, in the sense, there is nothing but, for example, whenever once this the payment is done, if there are any pending from any of these vendors, because every month end there will be a report, they'll be pulling the report, or if there are any due dates pending. So based on all these due dates, they'll try to check all these payments, whether really they are going on time. Sometimes it happens, vendor might have not received the payment. So all these things, it will be done in the settlement process here. So did you get an overview about this accounts payable? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. So the word itself, it says procure to payment. Between this procurement and the payment, these are the steps involved. So so if you are clear with this accounts payable cycle, and then we'll go to the next topic. So if you have any doubts, you can drop a message in chat box here. Shall we go for the next topic? Can you all please confirm? Hello. You can unmute and you can respond.
Yes.
Yes,
All
bro.
right. So, because this is very important, the reason being, once you understand the accounts payable cycle, right? Next time, going forward, we will be discussing each and every step, separately, right? So you will have to link all these things. So once you are able to understand, then it will be easy. So we are done with the accounts payable cycle. Now, important topic is like we'll not be discussing about this purchase, how to create the purchase requisition note now itself. So before we'll directly go to the vendor's creation here. And vendor groups. And then it will be followed by the vendor posting profiles. And then important is payment setups. And we'll discuss about the PO process. Okay, so before getting into this vendor creation, I'll try to explain this, in simple how to how to generalize the journal entry. For example, you might have remembered basic journal entry for goods purchases. Whenever you purchase any goods, right? Yeah. So, what is a journal entry for this particular transaction? It is simple, just purchases. Here, instead of purchases, we'll update it as a Wipro. Since we are receiving it, okay, I'll try to explain this later. So, purchase account data to cash or bank. So are you clear with this journal entry? I'm not updating this as an Wipro here. Anyways, I'll explain you why I'm not updating as an Wipro here. So for the timing, you understood it. This is simple journal entry. Purchases account data to cash or bank account. Purchase account is nothing but we just received the goods. For that reason, we are debiting this as a purchase since there is an increase in the asset value. So for that reason, we are recording it as a purchase account data, and then we have just paid this 100 rupees either through cash or bank. For that reason we have credited this cash or bank account. So are you clear with this journal entry? It is a very basic journal entry. And then so once you are clear with this, and then we'll try to understand how this journal entry will be shown in the Dynamics 365. Are you clear with this journal entry?
Yes.
Yeah. So now, as mentioned, we have purchased these products from the Wipro, right? So here we'll try to replace this purchases. Okay, let me not remove that one. So here we will call this Wipro as a vendor here. So for that purpose, we'll be creating an separate for that purpose in our software, we'll have to create an vendor, right? So what are the terms and conditions for this particular Wipro? Like if they have any particular bank account, or if they have any uh, delivery destination or anything, any those what are the products that are being sold by this Wipro. In order to record this transaction of this particular purchases, you should have a first Wipro. That is, Wipro is nothing but a vendor creation here. So once you create this vendor as a Wipro, so you will have for example, Reliance might be having a different types of vendors. For example, they are dealing with Reliance Fresh, vegetables will be there, and then they will be having an clothes. There are a lot of such products. For that particular purpose, they will have to identify this vendor is related to which group. They might have, for example, they will have to classify these vendors. Let's say domestic, wholesale. They might be having clothes also, right? So will the vendors who are selling clothes will have to create a separate group, and if they have any dis electronic products. So similarly, based on the requirement, based on the requirement, they will have to create a multiple vendor groups, so that it will help them to identify the transactions, or if they wanted to pull report of this particular vendor group, it will be easy for them. So now this one of this the first step, it will start with the creation of the vendor and then the vendor groups. So once this vendor creation is done, see, I'm trying to link the journal entry with the process, the entire process. That is where you'll it will be easy for you to connect the dots as well. See, at the end of the day, what is the main purpose of recording this transaction is to ensure that the payment is being done to the vendor, and then we are receiving the goods as per our requirement. So in between these are the steps which are involved. For example, as I mentioned, we have created Wipro as a vendor here with all the details and the vendor groups. And then, so once we create this Wipro account, what is the next step? This vendor has supplied the goods to us, right? uh, See, this is the simple for example, forget about this process, the forget about all these procure to pay steps. This is simple journal entry, right? We just received the goods and we are paying to the Wipro, that's all. Here the transaction is closed. But Reliance he's dealing with a number of products. They will be having some thousands of products, different warehouses. So it is practically not possible for them to straight away do the payments to the vendor. Just because they have received the goods, immediately they cannot do the payment. There are a lot of steps are involved. A lot of they'll have to check all those things, right? That is where here as discussed, let us assume that we have created the purchase order and we have sent it to Wipro. So once Wipro has confirmed, they have sent the goods, right? So the GRN entry. So instead of purchases, first GRN will be posted. So GRN is nothing but goods receipt note. So we are receiving the goods from the GRN, Wipro, right? So let us assume whenever there is an input of any of the goods, our asset will be increased. Asset is nothing but it's a value. The value of asset also will increase, right, in our books of accounts. Whenever there is an increase in the value of asset, it will have to debit that one. So if you want to debit any asset account here, for the time being, we'll see, we'll create there will be separate main account for this particular GRN. I mean, for this particular assets, that is cost of goods sold. Don't get confused with the cost of goods sold account here. It is simple that we are receiving the goods from the Wipro. Whenever there is an increase in the assets, there will be a debited, right? So we'll have to debit that one. So once we receive this cost of goods sold account, Yeah. Uh, See, for example, we have debited this one. For every debit, there should be a corresponding credit also, right? Where are we supposed to show this cost of goods sold account? Since it is, we have there is an see, we have received the goods, but we have not received the invoice still. So when we didn't receive the invoice, we'll have to create a separate account that is, you know, for the timing, we'll create it as an uninvoiced account. See, there are different types of my main accounts. For the timing, I'm just trying to make you understand. We'll be creating a separate goods received but uninvoiced. Here, cost of goods sold is nothing but we have received the goods, but we have to show it as an uninvoiced since we have not received an invoice. So till this, are you clear why this journal entry is being posted here? This GRN. Hello.
Yes, bro. Clear.
See, if you are not clear with this journal entry, going forward we will be having multiple, 2, 3, journal entries linked to this one only. For that reason, I'm telling you, try to pass me in case if you are not able to understand. Because see, once we receive the journey, once we receive the goods, right, immediately we'll have to, for example, there will be warehouse, right? So once they receive the goods, there is an increase in the asset. Whenever there is an increase in the asset, obviously our books of accounts also will reflect, stating that we have received the goods. But one thing, whenever we receive the goods, right, we are supposed to pay. But here, are we paying to the vendor? No, we are still not obligated to pay. The reason being, we have not received the invoice. For that reason, we are creating a separate main account, that is goods received uninvoiced account. So once GRN is done, we'll be receiving an invoice from the vendor. Yeah. So let me repeat it once again. In simple, we have received the goods. Whenever we receive the goods, right, we'll have to debit that particular account. Since it is an asset account, for that reason, we have created a cost of goods sold account, that is 100 rupees. And then whenever we, for example, it is very simple math. Whenever you receive a good, right, you are supposed to pay, but we are not paying here. Why we are not paying is we have not received the invoice. But legally, we are supposed, but liability is still there. Liable, if you want to show this liability, we'll have to create a separate account, that is goods received uninvoiced account, 100 rupees. And later vendor has sent invoice to us. So whenever they send an invoice to us, right, goods received uninvoiced account will be reversed here. Above journal entry will get reversed. So once we receive the invoice from this particular vendor, the above GRN, the above, see, let me not try to post this one. So assume that we have not posted this. So once we receive the goods, what is the next step? We are supposed to do the payment, right? So whenever we are supposed to do the payment, it is accounts payable account data to cash or bank account. Directly we can post this journal entry. Accounts payable is nothing but the vendor account. Here Wipro account. So directly we can post this journal entry, that is accounts payable account data to cash or bank account. But if you directly post this journal entry, then what about this transaction? We have just updated as an uninvoiced account, but we'll have to reverse this entry, right? Because if we don't reverse this account, there will be always difference of the 100 rupees. Because here we have here it is very clear that yes, we received the goods from this vendor and we have paid. So this debit and credit is matching. But here if you don't reverse this entry, there will be separate, there will be 100 rupees, it will be shown in your asset account, and there will be negative balance in the, I mean, it will show as a we are still it is uncleared. This 100 rupees is still uncleared. For that purpose, whenever we receive the invoice, right, we'll have to reverse this journal entry, and then this entry will be posted here. So till this, are you clear? Why we have to post this entry, and why this journal entry will get reversed? And this is the final entry. So here vendor will receive the goods. So did you understand why did I post these three entries here? Hello. Hello, Sankarshan. Can you unmute and you can unmute and tell me like if you have any doubts here. Ritesh,
Yeah, clear, bro. No doubts.
Ritesh,
Clear, bro.
because this is very important whenever you attend for any of the interview, right? The first point is they'll ask you the journal entries. There's no complication here. If you try to understand, if you try to post, anyways, these entries we will it will reflect in the soft backend itself. You need not to post. If you just understand this process from back, Ritesh, you can go on mute.
ఒక్క నిమిషం.
Alright. So as I mentioned, these entries are important. So once you understand, anyways, we'll be discussing all these entries once again. Just I'm trying to give an heads up so that once we start creating these vendor groups and all, it should not be difficult, or you should not feel that it's a complete new topic. So if you are clear with these journal entries, then I'll show you the screen. For example, Santosh, can you correct me if there is any wrong with any of this journal entries process?
It's fine. It's fine. We
So,
yeah, it looks fine because we have not received, but we have to. We are creating a liability, but we have received the goods. We have to create the liability. We cannot name the personal liability because we have not received the invoice. So we are creating one uninvoiced account. When we have actually received the invoice, we are reversing it, and again we are recording the payment.
so these names might differ as per the accounting practice followed by the system. They might create uninvoiced account or accounting clearing account. Different names they might use. Just to make you understand, I have updated as a goods received uninvoiced. Okay. So let me show you how does that uh, how it will reflect in the accounts payable. So let us assume that you are working since you are working as a functional consultant for Reliance. Reliance company doesn't know how to use the Dynamics 365 software. So you will have to explain them. Yes, see, these are the features are available. They will come up with lot of questions. I want to create multiple vendors at a time, or I want to see purchase order options. See, whatever the features that is related to accounts payable, right? You will have to let them know. Yes, if you want to view all the vendors, you can go to here. Just click on the all vendors. So it will take some time to load. Yeah. So these are the you see before getting into this, if you want to know the legal entities, on the top right side corner there is a drop down here. If you click on this drop down, you can see the list of the companies, legal entities, right? There are multiple legal entities which are created in the trial version with all the different types of transactions, everything. So ensure that USMF is selected whenever you are practicing. So these are the list of the vendors which it is already there in the USMF. In the same way, you can tell the customer stating that if you want to see multiple vendor, or if you want to see the list of the vendors, you will have to help demonstrate all these things. See all this because if you let them, they might, for example, they might be using the software SAP. The interface of that particular software is totally different. So if they want to see the list of the vendors, they might be having a different options to reach out to that. But here you will have to let them know. And if you want to create a new vendor, just click on the new here. Yeah. So now I'll try to create a new account, new vendor account, and then I'll make you understand. Okay. So this vendor account is nothing but we'll try to first give a name here. So this once you give the vendor account, actually this vendor account is nothing but there should be number sequence, but number sequence is not showing here. Anyway, just understand what is the purpose of this field. Vendor account, it will give you the unique ID number, unique code here. So by default it has to be created, but it is not showing. Wait, instead of creating the new account, I'll show you the existing vendor which is already there, and then we'll create the new one. Yeah, can you see here? I'll show you example. This is already created vendor, right? Yeah. So this is a unique number. We'll call it as a number sequence. By default, it will come whenever you create a new account. This will be these are there are few mandatory fields like vendor name and then a search name. You can, as I mentioned, we'll be creating multiple groups, right? You can give a unique code for that group as well. So all these details will check one by one.
What kind of group is that? Like, I mean,
So as per their requirement, we can create. For example, here we have discussed it, right? We can create domestic, wholesale, group, apparel, electronic products,
okay, okay.
as per the requirement. So we'll try to create a new vendor here. So, yeah. So by default, whenever you click on a new, there should be unique number should be generated. The reason why it is not generating is they might have updated in the number sequence as a manual. So we'll try to change that one. So remember this, whenever you want to change, see, there will be separate, we haven't discussed about accounts payable parameters. For in every module, there will be parameters page. So if you open this parameters page, there are a lot of setups that will be doing, right? These main accounts, and then the number sequences. All these things you can, you'll get all the information here. It is nothing but a controls. What are the main accounts that you are supposed to give for this particular vendor? What are the posting profiles? uh, you know all these there will be different controls here. You can explore all these things. Anyways, we'll be discussing these vendor accounts payable parameters separately. Since we have an issue with the number sequences, I'm directly coming here. Yeah, so here they have updated it as a manual. For that reason it was not showing. Now we'll quickly go back to the all vendors and we'll see. Yes, can you see here? By default I haven't updated the vendor account number. It got generated. Anyways, that we'll discuss later, like the number sequence creation, how to create the number sequence and all. So here we'll give it as a Wipro, and then search name also will give it the same. And as discussed, let us assume that this Wipro is a domestic vendor. So we will try to add this Wipro in a domestic vendors. Since there is no domestic vendors, if you want to create a domestic vendors, just whenever there's a asterisk symbol, right? I mean, whenever there is a mandatory symbol that is in the red color, if you want to check whether it is editable or not, just click on the drop down, give a right click. There's a view details here. Click on view details. Then it will take you to the next screen wherein you can create the new entries here. See, these are the vendor groups which are already created. We'll try to create a new vendor group here. Domestic vendors. Terms of payment is related to due date calculation. As I mentioned, for every vendor order, there will be a due date, right? We will be discussing, like, what do you mean by this net 30 month plus 15? It is simple. For example, we might be having the see, for example, Reliance have entered an agreement with the vendor stating that once we receive the PO within 30 days or within 15 days or 45 days, they will be doing the payment. So what is that particular terms of payment that they are following? And if it is they can give, for example, and the domestic vendors, they have 100 vendors in the parts services. They might be having different terms of payments, because same terms of payment is not applicable to each and every vendor, right? So based on that, we'll have to give these terms of payment, like cash, month end, or net one place day. These terms of payment are already created by the USMF, but if you want to create a new terms of payment, you can create that. So for the timing, we'll not give any terms of payment, because we'll discuss once we start doing the payments related configuration. For the timing, understand, if you want to create a new group, just click on the new, give the description. We'll try to create a one more group as well. Wholesale vendors. Let us say if you have a vendors from the foreign countries or abroad countries, you can create a separate group for them. Yeah. So we are considering this Wipro as a domestic vendor. So we will select Wipro as a domestic. Yeah. And these fields are not mandatory. If in case if you have information from the vendor, you can update all this number of employees, organization number. DUNMS number is not related to our Indian, maybe in few Western countries, or they might be having DUNS or something. If you have any of this information from the vendor, you can update this. The main intention is to understand what is the importance of each and every field here, and we will be having our boundaries as well, right? Because we are not supposed to. I mean, we are not into entering all these details or knowing the information of each and every field here. Whatever the basic and important details with regards to finance, we can understand, because this is something linked with the supply chain management team as well. So accounts payable, accounts receivable, these two are linked with the supply chain management. So that's the reason all this data will be, most of the times it will be filled by the SCM team only. Yeah. So if you have any vendor addresses, you can update it over here. Yeah. Just click on add. Yeah. Let me not enter any of this address. Just I'm trying to. I'll explain you. This is a process. If you want to enter any address, you can update. And if there is a primary, if it is related to primary, you can make it as a primary. Or if you have a for that particular country, if you are having vendors from different countries, you can update that address as a primary here. And the contact information, like their mobile number, website address, email ID. If you have anything, you can just update here over here. Add here. Yeah. And there are a lot of headers here. So for example, again under miscellaneous details, let us say your company having an internal credit rating policies. So based on that particular credit rating, in case if Wipro has some, if you want to rate this particular Wipro, you can give it this credit rating. And if you want to set up any credit limit here, let's say if you want to purchase only up to 1 lakh worth products from this particular Wipro, you can update it as an 1 lakh here. So it's something. So these are not mandatory. If you have, you can update. So vendor profile. So vendor profile, if this is something related to type of the vendor, if they are locally owned, small business, if any of these fields are applicable, you can check this box. Purchasing demographics, even currency, like for example, if you're dealing with a US country, you can update it as a US dollars. Based on the vendor country or currency he's dealing with, you can select the currency here. Primary contact person, you can add it over here. Employee responsible, like within your organization, who is the employee, who is a particular, there will be a separate employee, right, dealing with any of these vendors. If you want to give their names, you can add it over here. And if you want to add it in notes, you can update that as well. And invoice and delivery related information here. So invoice account, even these are not mandatory. If you have any information, for example, Wipro might be sending the goods, but if you want to deliver, if you want to invoice this goods to any other company, let's say instead of Wipro, they might be having a subsidiary company, or they might be they might have tied up with any other company like Infosys. Goods will be supplied by the Wipro, but you are supposed to raise an invoice in the name of, or if you will be receiving an invoice in the name of Infosys. If you have any such terms and conditions given by this Wipro, you can update here. So all these are based on the information that is available for the vendor. Even these also charges group. Charges group is nothing but, for example, whenever you create any, whenever you receive goods from any vendor, right? There are chances the goods might get damaged, or if you're there are a lot of such instances, right? So they might have a created insurance. And what is the terms? What is the agreement that you have entered with the vendor? Who is going to bear that insurance expenses? Or let us say they are sending some labor to unload this product while doing the shipment. So based on your agreement with the vendor, so whatever the charges that you are supposed to pay to that particular labor, all those charges groups you'll have to create. that anyways we'll be discussing later once we create a charge groups. And these are related to site warehouse, like for which particular site they are supposed to send, what is the warehouse. You might be having a number of warehouses and sites also. Site is nothing but a location. For example, we'll consider site as in Hyderabad, and warehouse as in different areas like Madhapur or Gachibowli or anything as such. You can name it as per the requirement. Yeah. So if you have any discounts, we'll be discussing this one by one later. If you have any discounts for that particular vendor, for example, if you're doing the payment before the purchase order due date, if you are being offered to get a discount from that particular vendor, you can update all those details here. Yeah. So this is something related to the payment. As I mentioned, this is the most important part, right? Because once you receive the goods from the particular vendor, you're supposed to pay on time. So this section, this page, like terms of payment, method of payment, payment type, cash discount, payment schedule, payment specification. All these are based on the terms that you have entered with the vendor. You'll have to update it here. We'll be discussing these payment terms separately one by one, like terms of payment, method of payment. See, because every vendor is not, I mean, they might be having their own way of accepting the cash from, or payment from the customers, right? Few of them they might accept only through check or through DD or electronic fund transfer. See, there are multiple types of payment sources, like post. They might be receiving PDC also. We'll be discussing all those PDC also in the next topic. So payment schedules, if you have any obligation to pay this particular payment in multiple payments, like if you want to split this payment, like two payments or three as per the requirement, you can create that one. So even this also will be discussing later. This is an example. If you select pay equally over 5 months, then whatever the amount that you're supposed to pay for this particular vendor will be, by default, it will get split into five payments. So every month there will be a deduction. And if you want to update any bank account for this, for example, if you might be having an different bank accounts, but if you want to pay for this vendor only for this from this particular bank account, you can update it over here, their bank account number. Now it is grayed out, but once you update all the details, it will enable. So these are not mandatory, but I'm trying to make you understand, because at any point of time there are chances they might ask you. For example, suddenly the client may ask you, is there any way to update the terms of payment or payment related details while creating the vendor itself? You should be in a you should be ready to tell that yes, we have an option, and I can even demonstrate you. Though you don't understand later, but you should know that there is an option that you can update the payment related information as well. This tax 1099, it is not related to Indian vendors. Like maybe in few countries they might have a few details, right, related to vendor. Like we have GST or VAT or anything. If they have any tax related information, they can update here. This is retail. Even these details are not mandatory. If you have any information, you can update here. See, variants is nothing but, for example, if vendor might be sending different types of sizes, styles, and all. Right? If you have any information, you can update. And financial dimensions, these also very important. See, financial dimensions is nothing but a cost centers. For example, anyways, we'll be creating these financial dimensions. For example, Reliance have a multiple branches, like pan India. They have branches, right? And also they have a different types of business units. Business unit is nothing but uh, for example, they are having vegetable Reliance Fresh is there, Reliance Footwear is there, Reliance Digital is there. So all these will be considering as a business units, different verticals of their business. And then cost center is also, for example, if for example they might be having a again under digital, and under this electronics they might be having an home appliances will be there, laptops will be there, and then washing machines, or any, for if they want to categorize these products, and if you want to consider this particular vendor is related to this particular cost center or particular business unit, you can update here. If I show you the drop down, then you will understand. For example, see, these are the business units: home, auto, management, IT, electronics, and all. Let us say this Wipro is supplying us electronic related products, so we'll update it as an electronics here. See, financial dimensions will help you. For example, whenever you pull the report, right, you want to know like how many vendors are supplying electronic products. Then what is the easy way to pull the report? If you just go to the business units and if you search for this, 005 with this vendor, you will get all the vendors. And let us say you want to still, drill down the report based on the for if you want to clarify, if you want to classify based on the activities as well, because if you see here, there are different types of activities that are being done by the Reliance, that is trade shows, marketing campaign, production control, logistics. And let us say this vendor is related to marketing campaign, he's supplying some information that or some products related to marketing campaign. You can select this as a marketing campaign. And the department, let us say you have multiple departments like finance, accounts, then HR, and this vendor is supplying to that is something related to sales and marketing. You can select it as a see, we'll be creating all these financial dimensions. See them now. You should be able to understand the reason. What is the use of selecting this business unit cost center department? Because it is not easy for you to once you pull the report, right, if you don't have any all these business unit cost center and department, how will you identify whether this vendor or whatever the expenses that you are spending, you are incurring, that is related to marketing campaign or sales, marketing, electronics, and all. To make it easier to pull the reports whenever you are doing any activities, right, it is always suggested to select the financial dimensions. So these are the basic things which we're supposed to discuss about vendor creation. If you are clear with this vendor creation, vendor groups, and the P2P cycle, then we can stop for today, and then we can resume from tomorrow. So if you have any doubts, you can let me know now itself, so that tomorrow it should not be challenging for you to connect from here for the next topic. See, whatever I have explained, right? It won't take much time. Hardly it will take 2 or 3 minutes to update all these vendor details. The reason why it is taking time is I need to explain each and every field. Once you understand the importance of each and every field, it should be easy for you to create any of the vendors. So, are you clear with this? How to create an vendors here and vendor groups? Hello, can you all please unmute and respond?
Yes, Vic.
Yeah. Yes, bro. Okay.
Okay, so try to record. Try to create multiple vendors in your trial version. Then it will be easy for you. Hardly it will take only 2 or 3 minutes to create one vendor. That's all. So if you try to do it on daily basis, then it should not be. It should be easy for you to practice as well. Anyway, we are not going to create any of these vendors. Whenever you are into any of the project, we'll be receiving the data from the company itself. See, because they might be having some thousands of vendors, right? It is not that they will be having a one or two vendors. They might be having multiple vendors. So you cannot go ahead and create one by one. There is a separate process where through data migration, we'll be updating all these vendors into our Dynamics 365.